The gate across the arena floor groaned open, and every sound in the chamber died at once. I felt it in my chest before I understood why. Something large was standing on the other side of that gate, and it was breathing in slow, heavy pulls, the kind of breathing that comes from a creature that has never lost. My name is Aris Kell, and I was standing in the observation ring of the Kesh-Vantar trade station, pressed between two delegates twice my height, watching a fight I had tried to stop only an hour earlier. Beside me stood Grace Whitfield, the human ambassador, calm as still water, her arms folded, her eyes fixed on the small animal sitting patiently at her feet. The animal was called Chomper. He had a wide, low body, a coat of black and gray, and small dark eyes that did not seem to notice the size of what he was about to face. Across from us, the Draxworm reared up. It stood taller than three grown men stacked on each other, its hide plaited in ridges of hard, dark green armor, its jaw wide enough to close around a torso in a single motion. I had seen its record. 11 wins, no losses, no real injuries. It was the pride of the Skarath delegation, and its handler, a towering reptile named Vex Thaler, was already smiling in the way his people smile, all teeth and no warmth. "Your creature will not last 10 seconds, Vex said, his translator flattening the amusement in his voice into something almost polite. Grace didn't answer him. She crouched down instead, unclipped the cord from Chomper's collar, and whispered something to him that none of the translators caught. Then she stood up and stepped back. The Draxworm let out a sound like metal tearing apart, a sound built over generations to end a fight before it started. Half the gallery flinched. I flinched. Chomper did not. He trotted forward, at a steady, almost lazy pace, the way you might cross a street you had walked 1,000 times before. Then, without any warning, he broke into a sprint and went straight for the Draxworm's throat. The impact, when the Draxworm's foreleg caught him mid-air, was enough to silence the entire gallery. Chomper flew sideways, hit the arena wall, and dropped to the ground in a heap. I heard Vex laugh. I heard several delegates around me exhale in relief, as if the danger had passed. Then Chomper stood up. He shook himself the way a wet animal shakes off water, rolling the impact right out of his shoulders, and ran back in. The Draxworm swung again, faster this time, catching him across the side. Chomper tumbled, skidded across the floor, and this time I saw something that made my heart stop for a moment. He got up before he had even finished sliding. "This is not possible," whispered the delegate beside me, a thin, pale being from the outer trade rings, her 4 eyes wide and unblinking. I did not answer her, because I did not know what to say. I had studied 100 species in my years as a diplomat. I had read reports on their strengths, their weapons, their armies. Nothing in any of those reports prepared me for what I was watching now. The Draxworm tried a different approach. It brought its full weight down toward the smaller animal, meaning to end the match in one motion. Chomper rolled beneath the strike, came up on the other side, and clamped onto the joint of the creature's leg. The Draxworm roared and shook its leg violently, trying to fling him off, but Chomper held on with a kind of stubbornness I had never seen in any living thing. His body seemed loose inside his own skin, twisting and turning no matter how the larger creature moved, always finding a way to keep his grip. "Get him off," Vex shouted at his handlers, his composure slipping for the first time since the match began. But there was nothing to do. The rules of the beast trial forbade any interference once the gate had opened. Whatever happened now, happened between the two of them, and only them. The Draxworm slammed itself against the far wall, trying to crush the smaller animal between its own body and the stone. Chomper let go just before the impact, dropped to the ground, and circled around fast, already looking for another opening. I noticed, watching him move, that he never once looked afraid, not startled, not shaken, not even particularly bothered. He looked, if anything, mildly annoyed, the way you might look at a task that was taking longer than expected. The fight went on like this for what felt like a very long time, though the station's clocks would later tell me it was under 3 minutes. Each time the Draxworm struck him, Chomper absorbed it and came back. Each time the Draxworm tried to run, Chomper caught up to it and pulled it back into the fight. Slowly, I began to understand something the Scareth delegation clearly had not expected. The Draxworm was not built to face something that refused to stop. Its strikes, once sharp and controlled, grew wide and desperate. It was no longer fighting to win, it was fighting to escape, and there is a particular kind of fear that settles into a creature once it understands, for the first time in its life, that it might not be the strongest thing in the room. Chomper sensed it too. He pressed the advantage without pause, moving low and fast, finding every gap the larger animal left open in its panic. The Draxworm's roars turned into something closer to a whimper, and then, all at once, the great creature folded down onto the arena floor and did not get back up. The gallery went completely silent. Grace Whitfield stepped forward, called Chomper's name once, and he trotted back to her side, as calmly as he had left it, sat down, and began cleaning a small scrape on his front paw, as though nothing unusual had happened at all. Vex Thaler stood frozen at the edge of the arena, staring at his fallen champion. For the first time since I had met him, he had nothing clever to say. I turned to Grace, who was crouched beside Chomper, scratching behind his ears while he leaned into her hand. "You knew this would happen," I said. "I knew he would try," she said simply. "He always tries. That's what he does." "But the size difference," I said. "The armor, the claws, none of it seemed to matter to him." Grace smiled, a small, tired smile, and looked out at the crowd of delegates still staring in stunned silence. "That's the thing about him," she said. "He was never taught to measure a fight before he starts it. Where he comes from, on our old world, animals far bigger than him used to try to take what was his, or come near what he cared about, and he never once stopped to consider whether he could win. He simply decided the fight was already his, and made everyone else agree with him." I looked back at the Draxworm, still lying on the arena floor, its handlers rushing in now that the trial had ended, checking it over with visible relief that it was still breathing. "Your entire species is like this," I said slowly, understanding settling over me the way cold water settles into a bowl. "You did not bring him here as a joke." "No," Grace said. "We brought him because he is exactly who we are. We look small sometimes. We look calm, even harmless. People assume that means we won't fight, or that if we do, we'll lose. But we don't measure the size of the thing in front of us before we decide to stand our ground. We just stand it." Around us, the other delegations had begun murmuring to each other in their own languages, the earlier laughter completely gone from the room. I saw the pale, four-eyed delegate from earlier, staring at Chomper with something closer to respect than curiosity. I saw Vex Thaler turn away from the arena without a single word, walking slowly back toward his own quarters, his shoulders lower than I had ever seen them. I stayed behind after most of the crowd had cleared, watching Grace clip the cord back onto Chomper's collar. He looked up at her, tail wagging slightly, entirely unaware, it seemed, of the impression he had just left on 11 other worlds. "What will you call this match, back on your world?" I asked her. "A victory? A lesson?" She thought about it for a moment, gathering the leash in her hand. "We'll probably just call it a normal afternoon," she said, and there was no boast in her voice at all, only quiet honesty. "This is who he is, every single day. Today, you all just happened to be watching." I walked back to my own quarters that evening, turning her words over again and again. In 400 years of diplomacy, I had learned to judge a species by the size of its armies, the strength of its weapons, the height of its warriors. I had never once thought to judge a species by the animals it chose to keep close, and what that choice revealed about its people. Humans did not surround themselves with the biggest or the fiercest creatures their world had to offer. They kept the fearless ones. The ones who never learned to calculate the odds before deciding to stand their ground, who never once considered backing down as an option worth thinking about. We had laughed when we first saw Chomper on his leash, small and unthreatening, trotting along beside his owner like an afterthought. None of us laughed again after that day. And across every delegation on that station, the stories that spread afterward were never really about the fight at all. They were about a single quiet truth, whispered from one species to another in the corridors of the trade station for cycles afterward. Never judge the size of the fight in a human, or in anything a human chooses to call their own, until you have seen what happens when they refuse to stop.